I just wanted to say thank you so much for letting me have the extraordinary experience of actually hosting the event sometimes, which was pretty amazingly exciting for me to meet such incredible human beings and actually have a conversation where I wasn't completely sunk for the lack of knowledge, largely because of the vigil itself and your articles that you wrote, which is how I actually met you, Susie, is that I was tweeting out her article on what was it? It was it's the play on the movie title. We are all Julian Assange. What was the title of
Being Julian Assange.
There we go. It was a play on a film title. I remember that. And but what really was so incredibly valuable is that I started listening to the vigils. And as someone who is, I'm not a journalist, I'm certainly, I care about the world, was an incredible education for me. And in fact, I was going to suggest to Joe Lauria, there are newspapers of record. I think this vigil is a bloody record of the most astonishing body of activism, of help me here, John. You were nodding your head there. But just incredible wealth of valuable human positions on how society should run and what are the terrible disastrous structural nightmares that we have to deal with now, which is basically, I know we all have different political viewpoints, but I think it's undeniable. Government is out of control on this planet. And if it isn't all governments, it's certainly certain governments that have such sway over all other governments that we've got a real sci-fi movie in the making on this planet. We have the potential for us to be truly the horror of George Orwell's vision of somebody with a boot in the back of their neck forever, and so I was going to suggest that this vigil is very carefully and with great reverence given to the what is it? The American government? The American Library of Congress or whatever. This is I don't know if all of you have taken the what?
It's historic.
It's the thing is it's almost like a time capsule of every bloody time that human beings have faced tyranny. This is the discussion that would have been had. Yes, it's updated with, the technology that we're facing now is even more daunting than it was. But I said this on several of the vigils. 2,400 years ago, Aristotle was describing to a T the very methods of tyranny, and they're unchanging. I guess you could say, a wheel is a wheel. You can't improve on it. You figure out how to do tyranny, you can't really improve on it, except we've got this terrifying technological improvement. And if there was ever more evidence that you needed that we live under a tyranny on this planet, and that the discussions that have occurred during this vigil over the last 15 months are really probably some of the most important things that people should listen to right now on the planet, because they consist of experts within the field, like Ray McGovern and John Kiriakou, and experts in whistleblowing and journalists. And if you want a crash course in what to be thinking about and the problems that we face, just watch all these vigils. They're awesome. And then as another item that I think is critical, that anybody who's watching this, you have a duty to find an example that you can actually think with, to show your friends how they're being lied to, so that you can get more and more people to address the fact that they are so manipulated, both in school, in universities, in the rather frightening, if any of you are big Kindle users, which I am myself, of the weird and strange things where you suddenly find books missing from your library. And when you look them up, it says we no longer have the publishing or whatever it is. They have so many subtle ways now of removing our property, even. The property of owning a book. I have thousands of books on Kindle. And at first, I thought this was the greatest, revolution in the history of mankind, to be able to walk around with a library in your pocket. But of course, like all of these technological advances, they carry with it, and I have to believe that this was understood when they started creating all these things. They carry with it tremendous, tremendous control over what we have access to. I mean, think of it. Would it be that far-fetched to imagine that Amazon would say, we don't like Vivian Kubrick. We're actually we're going to give her all her money back, but we're going to take all her Kindle books away, which have all my notes in it and all my, highlights. Or I found that with my iTunes or podcasts, I mean, they can go in a second. And unless you're paying attention, you don't realize that they're even gone, except when you're starting to look for it. So, you know, everybody needs to, if they're cognizant of these things, they need to start talking to their friends who are oblivious, either through being too busy or just oblivious because they can't confront it. It's so hard to confront these things, to actually acknowledge that we face such I don't want to give them a good hard on thinking about the power they have, but they have such power over us. And if we allow them also to remove paper money and make everything plastic, it takes them 1 second to just complete. I mean, we've all seen what defunding can do, right? Susie suffered from it. You know, that we have so many issues that have come up on this vigil, and I'm trying to sort of put all together the ones that I think are super bloody important. During the Third Reich, what did they do to the Jews? They closed down their businesses. They wouldn't let them conduct any kind of way of bringing income into their lives. So they became very poor and starving and desperate people. They also wouldn't let them have jobs. They literally were outlawed. You were not allowed to have Jewish teachers, Jewish doctors, whatever. If you think for 1 second that Julian could get a job as a teacher or get a job at anything after this, even if he gets out of this nightmarish situation, they're going to continue to persecute him unless we, all of us, really get on the case about how are the ways that you can unperson somebody. And these days it's so invisible. It's so hard for people to even tell that somebody's been unpersoned. So there's a lot here. There's a lot. I mean, obviously the cause of saving Julian has not finished. And like Emmy is going to be carrying on. But all of us individually, our job is not finished here. Just like, oh, the vigil's over, right? Okay, I'll go back into not going online and mouthing off about everything. I mean, I don't know if anyone looks at my Twitter feed, but if I don't soon get a court order for stalking President Trump, I don't know who shouldn't get a court order on them, because I bloody tweeted that man. I mean, perhaps I'm delusional, but I have this idea that at least somebody's looking at the tweets that he gets back. And I send them to Rudy Giuliani as well. And I just think that you've got to keep doing something. And the most important thing is that you've got to find real examples for yourself that you can share with your friends of how people are unpersoned, how they are defunded, deplatformed, and how that parallels what happened during the Third Reich. And you don't have to read 400 books to understand what happened in the Third Reich. People lost their form of employment, they lost their income, they even lost their passports, for Christ's sake. And hello, Julian didn't have his passport for a long time in the Australia. I mean, do you see all the different ways that government has become the equivalent of a despotic bureaucracy? And, when people are going, oh, we need to stay in the EU, it means I can go and work in Paris if I feel like it. It's like, Jesus Christ, people, don't you see how the centralization of power is exactly the vision that George Orwell had for us? So, not only am I trying to encapsulate what I think is very important for people to focus on, but I also want to show you that what Susie did, one human being, admittedly kick-ass, pistol of a woman, But you know, there's plenty more of Susies in the world, that you can do a lot on your own. And number one thing is to not shut up about it. Don't just think that you go out on the street corner for an afternoon and go, save Julian. You know, you've actually got to do it to the point where people are going, oh God, stop this woman from talking. And that's what you have to get to, is that place in yourself. You have to realize what's at stake, and you've got to be brave, because it takes bravery to face the danger we're in. I'm sorry, I am the worst chatterbox. So
no, you're awesome. You're awesome, Vivian. I'll just say two things there. One, every time somebody tells me that I'm brave, I say, no, I'm stubborn. I'm really, really stubborn. I refuse to quit. I refuse to give up. It's not about bravery. It's about determination. That's my 2 cents. But I also just...
that. I'm sorry to interrupt. This is such an important conversation. I want to add something that Craig Murray told me a couple of weeks ago. He said that when he first reported back to his foreign minister that the CIA and the Uzbek intelligence service were torturing prisoners, he sent this notification back in a cable that he had classified top secret. Apparently, the minister was livid that he had put this in writing. And so they called him back to London for consultations. Well, it just so happened that Craig's best friend from the Foreign Service was the director of human resources for the Foreign Service, the entire Foreign Service, British Foreign Service. And so he invited Craig to lunch. And he said, listen, they're talking about you in the hall. And the minister's very, very upset that you put this torture report in writing. So I'm prepared to offer you ambassador to Denmark if you withdraw the report. And he said they had been friends for 30 years and he didn't know me at all. And he said, what's the alternative? He said, the alternative is you hire a criminal defense attorney. And he said, then I quit. That is something that to me is a natural, normal thing to do. I don't think that I like to think that I don't know anybody that would have taken ambassador to Denmark rather than stand on his principles. You're right. It's not bravery. It's stubbornness, because in our hearts, we know that we've been doing the right thing. There's not a choice to be made. There's only one choice. And the choice is to do the right thing. That's it. And then when we see an injustice, like we've seen with Julian, we have to stand up and we have to say that's an injustice until we've convinced everybody and we right the wrong. That's what this is all about.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And also look how much strength we have in numbers.
That's right.
Look how much stronger we have been with Unity4J with 100 of us working together and speaking than if it was just one of us on our soapbox. And that's not to say that you shouldn't start with one, because I tell you what, every mass movement starts with somebody who's prepared to go out and maybe make a dick of themselves if needs be, maybe be a little bit embarrassed on the first occasion, but to actually attract others and to build a mass movement, it does start with one. But the 350 million social media impressions came as the result of our collective efforts and our collective solidarity. And none of us could have achieved that by ourselves, but together we've been able to. Jump in, you guys.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say something else, is that I was actually watching in real time when Laura Loomer, she had on Laura Loomer hashtag on Twitter, it was at 9.2 million. And I watched it in real time go from 9.2 million to 274 people, or 273. So I watched it.
Sorry,
the reason why, no, but I just want to say something. The reason why that's so important is that people have to understand, they know how important it is. When people see something like, shit, 9 million people? Wow, this is important. So don't be discouraged if anything on social media goes, oh, 71 people only looked at this over the last year. They screw around with those numbers. I saw it in real time before my eyes. I tweeted it out. I tweeted out to the president as per usual. But I just wanted to really underline the fact, safety in numbers, right? They're trying to discourage you by thinking that only, you know, your Aunt Mabel and the cat is watching. So don't let that discourage you, because they know how that is discouraging. Understand that this is huge. I saw it with my own eyes. 9.2 million hashtag Laura Loomer go down to 273 people in front of my bloody face. So please, please, please.
The same thing. With Unity4J, we've experienced the same thing. So when I say there's 350 million, I mean, that was a long time ago that we hit 350 million. So it's actually much more than that. But that was our own analytic tracking programs that we set up to be able to track the hashtags. And we saw that even though we could see 20,000 accounts tweeting to the hashtag and participating in it, Twitter, when it finally trended on Twitter in Washington, DC and in Sydney, Australia, it said 270 people have tweeted about this, and we're sitting there with our analytics program that's like 10, 15, 20 times that amount, you know. So yeah, absolutely. And we've seen also in our YouTube streams, like, people will come and go by the hundreds, but it'll be one static amount watching. It'll say like 180 watching live, and it'll maintain that number for like 2 hours. But we can see from the YouTube chat, you know, that that's just absolutely not the case. So yeah, you have to take the numbers with a grain of salt. But I wanted to just speak to what you were saying before about your Kindle and their ability to censor digital archives, because this is what Julian's been harping on about for years. And it's also why WikiLeaks was established in the first place, was to create a permanent, indelible, uncensorable record of information in the public interest. So, and actually in the article I put out last week, Freeing Julian Assange Part 1, I quoted him talking about the ways that mainstream media are retroactively censoring their digital archives. And he said that when they delete historical content from their archives, it's not just that that article no longer exists, but that the article never existed.
Woo, yes, that's the scary part. Yep.
They are literally deleting human history. And when I wrote that article, I went back, and the reason it took me months to produce it is because I went and read every single tweet about WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, not just from them, but about them for the entire year of 2010. And 90% of those links were all broken, gone, vanished from the internet. The history of WikiLeaks, the public history, the narrative conversations, the blog posts, the media about them, vanished as if they never existed. So that's why WikiLeaks is so important, and it's why WikiLeaks is such a threat, because WikiLeaks was preserving an accurate record of human and diplomatic and governmental and corporate history that those entities themselves don't allow to exist.